So I'm Tyler. I'm a PhD student at UC San Diego, and I'll be talking about whether contextual diversity hinders early word acquisition. So we'll start with the broad question: how do children learn mappings from word forms to meanings? So children receive a lot of raw speech as input, and they learn to map speech segments to objects in the environment and other types of concepts. If we abstract away the parsing of speech into words, then we want to consider how children are mapping these words to meanings. One way children can do this is with co-occurrences between words or between words and stimuli. This is often considered statistical learning, where children learn statistical co-occurrence relations between words and other words or between words and stimuli. And of course, children also have all these other social cues we've been talking about, like eye gaze, joint attention, and pointing that help them better identify reference when they're learning words. Then, how do we evaluate factors in early word learning? One way we can do this is to consider when children acquire individual words. So previous work has looked at the age of acquisition of a word, the age at which 50% of children produce a word as reported by parents. In this example, during ages 15 to 30 months of years old, 15 to 30 months of age, then children produce the word walk with different proportions, and we can fit a curve and get the 50% point and call that the age of acquisition of the word walk around 20 to 25 months of age here. Then a common approach is to evaluate which factors affect or correlate with the word's ages of acquisition. Some significant predictors from previous work include log frequency. So more frequent words tend to be acquired earlier. More concrete words tend to be acquired earlier. Words that appear in longer utterances tend to be acquired later. And then different lexical classes like nouns, verbs, and adjectives tend to have different mean ages of acquisition. The factor that we wanted to consider in our work is contextual diversity, the diversity of contexts, linguistic, sensory-motor, or social, in which a word appears. Our work will focus mostly on linguistic contextual diversity, which tends to correlate with other types of contextual diversity. Previous work has found conflicting evidence for how contextual diversity affects early word acquisition. Hills found that words that appear in more diverse contexts are learned earlier. Their corpus-derived metric for contextual diversity was negatively correlated with words' ages of acquisition. They hypothesized that more connections to known words allows better syntactic and semantic bootstrapping, allowing children to place more constraints on a word's meaning and making it easier to narrow down a word's meaning or get a fuller understanding of the word in the wide variety of contexts it appears. However, previous work has also found that words that consistently appear in what they call distinct contexts are learned earlier. They quantified distinctness using a measure over a word's co-occurrences or occurrences in time, space, and semantic topics, and they found that more distinct words, or words that appeared more in distinct contexts, tended to be learned earlier, suggesting that intuitively, repeated exposure to a word in the same kind of unique context facilitates learning. And in this case, diverse contexts and contextual diversity might simply add noise to the word learning process for young children. In our work, we tried to reconcile these two conflicting results by extending the Hills result, the corpus-based contextual diversity metric, to different languages, and we accounted for a nonlinear effect of word frequency on the raw contextual diversity metric. The languages we considered were English, German, Mandarin, Spanish, and French. More specifically, the contextual diversity metric from Hills measures the number of distinct lemmatized words that appear within some window of the target word in the child-as corpus of child-directed speech. In this example, the word sentence, if we look in a window size 3 inclusive, then there are 4 unique co-occurring words or lemmas. And so in this sentence, the co-occurrence count is 4, and the contextual diversity of the word sentence is 4. However, this raw contextual diversity metric, it turns out, is highly correlated with word frequencies. Kind of unsurprisingly, words that are more frequent have a higher chance of co-occurring with a larger number of unique other words. This is a pretty large effect with correlations between 0.72 and 0.92, but importantly, this effect appeared to be nonlinear, as we can see in the plots below, plotting the raw contextual diversity over words' log frequencies. So to account for this correlation, this nonlinear correlation between the raw metric and frequency, we considered the residuals of sigmoid regressions that were predicting this raw contextual diversity metric from word log frequencies. So these are the fitted curves, the blue curves in each of the plots. Then the residuals reflect the contextual diversity metric of co-occurrence counts, but after accounting for the expected co-occurrences based on word frequencies. This was our final contextual diversity metric, and in other slides, we're going to talk about contextual diversity metric, and we'll be referring to this frequency adjusted metric, accounting for the expected co-occurrences from frequencies. So maybe we then hope to isolate the effects of contextual diversity outside and independent from word frequencies. As in other work, we predicted the age of acquisition for individual words from the word's contextual diversity. We obtained words age of acquisition data from the word bank database. And first, as a straightforward starting point, we ran linear regressions predicting age of acquisition from the frequency adjusted contextual diversity metric. So the numbers here are the R-squareds, indicating how much of the variance is accounted for by contextual diversity. But importantly, the sign next to each of the numbers indicates the sign of the coefficient for contextual diversity. So here, in contrast to Hill's and the original study, when we use the frequency adjusted contextual diversity metric, there's a consistent positive effect of contextual diversity on words' ages of acquisition. So that means that contextually diverse words tend to be acquired later if we use this frequency adjusted metric. Then we get a similar result after we account for the previously mentioned covariates from the Brzezinski paper. So log frequency, the number of characters in a word, concreteness ratings of words, the lexical classes, noun, verbs, adjectives, etc. of words, and the mean length of utterances containing a word. And we ran linear regressions predicting age of acquisition from these 5 covariates. And using likelihood ratio tests, we found that contextual diversity still accounted for additional variance in age of acquisition in the majority of languages. And its sign was positive in all of these cases, even the non-significant case of French, which had the smallest corpus size. So this indicates that across languages, even after we account for these other covariates, contextual diversity has a positive effect on age of acquisition in that more contextually diverse words tend to be acquired later. Then we can consider different types of contextual diversity. Previous work has considered window size as kind of a gradient between syntactic and semantic contextual diversity. Smaller windows capture immediate context, which often reflects syntactic features like part of speech, constraints of immediately adjacent words. Larger windows capture slightly more distant words, reflecting more general semantic topic. So we ran our same analyses, computing contextual diversity with different window sizes and predicting words' ages of acquisition in different languages. And we found that in all languages except Mandarin, there were larger effects of semantic diversity or larger window sizes, and it accounted for more variance in words' ages of acquisition as we increase the window size. However, Mandarin obviously doesn't seem to follow this pattern. We hypothesized that these larger effects of, quote, syntactic diversity in Mandarin may be because Mandarin has very little inflectional morphology, which might make words that appear in diverse syntactic contexts more difficult to learn because the syntactic cues are less contained in the word itself. Of course, All of these other languages are European languages, so we'll need additional research to understand differences between languages and the effects of syntactic versus semantic contextual diversity in early word learning. But that said, regardless of window size, all of the significant coefficients for contextual diversity were positive, indicating that across languages and syntactically or semantically, contextually diverse words tend to be acquired later. Finally, because languages had different corpus sizes, we considered contextual diversity computed from different size corpora for different languages. We subsampled the child as corpus for each language to simulate a smaller corpus of child-directed speech. And again, we reran our analyses, and regardless of corpus size, all significant coefficients for contextual diversity were positive, diverse words being acquired later. And we found that larger data sets tended to produce cleaner contextual diversity metrics that seem to better capture the hindering effects of contextual diversity on word learning. So as we increase the corpus size, contextual diversity had a larger R squared, or a larger effect on words' ages of acquisition. So what can we conclude from this? We found that contextually diverse words were consistently acquired later, and this was consistent across languages, window sizes, so syntactic versus semantic contextual diversity, and across different corpus sizes. This suggests that contextual diversity does add noise to the process of mapping novel words to meanings, in contrast to the original study that used the same corpus-derived metric. And this has implications for contextual diversity across age ranges. So contextual diversity appears to differ for older children and adults, and young children. In this case, we're looking at words that are acquired generally before 5 years old. So in older children and adults, there's pretty consistent effects that seem to show that contextual diversity improves word learning. And it's hypothesized that this is due to bootstrapping, so a better ability to infer a word's meaning based on context because you know all of these other known words, and contextually diverse words will have more constraints placed on their meanings and will have a better understood meaning because you see them in a wide variety of contexts. And second, contextually diverse words are hypothesized to facilitate improved retrieval because they appear in a wide variety of contexts, they're retrieved in a wide variety of contexts, and it improves the context general retrieval of each word. And these two benefits of bootstrapping and improved retrieval seem to overcome any possible noise-introducing effects of contextual diversity in these older children, children as young as around 3rd grade, and adults. In contrast, we found that young children, it seems that these noise effects and contextual diversity seem to overshadow any effects or benefits of bootstrapping and improved retrieval. So in young children, contextual diversity seems to hinder word acquisition. This is likely because young children have little existing vocabulary to rely on, so the bootstrapping is perhaps less effective, and they're still early in conceptual development, and improved retrieval is maybe less important than the initial mapping of a word to its meaning. So, in conclusion, our results suggest that correlationally, contextual diversity appears to hinder early word acquisition. Of course, there are several caveats. The study is correlational. We use a corpus-based metric instead of using a more holistic measure of contextual diversity. And of course, because it's correlational, there's lots of possible covariates that could be affecting our results. Still, for now, these results suggest that the consistency of contextual cues is of central importance to early word learning when children have little existing vocabulary to rely on. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and my advisor, Ben Bergen, Thomas Hills for feedback on our contextual diversity metric, and the UCSD Language and Cognition Lab and the Data Science Institute. Thank you.